That Comey was the new J. Edgar Hoover. I thought that he would do the right thing for the country. Comey, who's, of course, a Republican, refused to divulge this information regarding Russia in the presidential election.
Do you believe that Jim Comey should resign, Senator Reid?
Of course, yes.
Good morning and welcome to AM Joy. Okay, this is how bold Donald Trump is. Just an hour after my interview with outgoing Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid on the FBI and allegations that Russia intervened in the U.S. election to help Trump win, sources told our Andrea Mitchell that Trump's pick for Secretary of State will be none other than Exxon CEO and Vladimir Putin pal Rex Tillerson. Tillerson has known the Russian leader since he represented Exxon's interest in Russia in the 1990s. And in 2011, Tillerson brokered a multi-billion-dollar oil drilling deal with Russia. That was eventually blocked by sanctions imposed by the U.S. and its allies in response to Russia's aggression against Ukraine, sanctions which Tillerson opposes. Here's the two besties, Putin and Tillerson, toasting their lucrative friendship back in 2013. And Tillerson is just the latest on a long list of Trump advisors who have Moscow ties. There's Trump's national security advisor, Michael Flynn, who gave a paid speech in Moscow where he was photographed sitting next to Putin at a dinner for Kremlin-funded cable channel RT, which is short for Russia Today. There's Trump's daughter, Ivanka, who this summer reportedly vacationed with Putin's rumored girlfriend, Rupert Murdoch ex Wendy Deng. There's Carter Page, a former Trump advisor who was scrutinized by the FBI for his dealings with Russia and who just happened to be in Moscow Thursday for meetings with business and thought leaders. And of course, there's the man who resides on Trump Tower's 43rd floor, former campaign manager Paul Manafort, who left the campaign over his alleged ties to a pro-Russian political party in Ukraine, but is still in contact with Trump's transition team and apparently has been back advising the campaign since before Election Day. Joining me now, Matt Welch, editor-at-large for Reason Magazine, Yashar Ali, contributor for New York Magazine and The Daily Beast, Washington Post opinion writer Jennifer Rubin, MSNBC contributor Malcolm Nance, and former U.S. Ambassador to Russia Michael McFaul. And Ambassador McFaul, I want to start with you on this. For Americans who may be looking at all of these Russia ties and maybe feeling uncomfortable with it, but not understanding how it could be problematic, what would you say to those who say, so what if Donald Trump is surrounded by lots of people who have an affinity for Vladimir Putin?
Well, the most important so what is that the Russians not only have these connections with people close to President-elect Trump, but that they may have done something to make him president. And that has to be something that all Americans care about, Democrat, Republican, or independent. We have to have free and fair elections in this country, and there's just mounting evidence now to suggest that there was interference. And the only way we're going to get to the bottom of it, in my view, is to have a bipartisan independent commission to look into everything, including the long list of things you just listed.
And, Jennifer Rubin, you wrote an excellent piece in the Washington Post outlining what you think that that Capitol Hill Republicans should start doing, the questions they should start asking. I want to play you what John McCain told our own Casey Hunt, and this was yesterday when Casey Hunt asked about the Russians and Donald Trump's doubts that they were behind the interferences in our election. Take a listen to John McCain.
Well, in his case, he's much more than a business executive. I mean, he's a world-class player. He's in charge of, I guess, the largest...
Look, that's actually Donald Trump talking about Mr. Tillerson. Let's go to slot number 5. This is John McCain talking about the Russians.
I have no doubt that the Russians were involved in very serious breaches that we have all seen about. Whether they were intended to help Donald Trump or not, I do not know. That has to be the subject of overall hearings that we're going to have on the Armed Services Committee, the whole issue of cyber attacks.
And Jennifer Rubin, is the time and place to start to litigate this a confirmation hearing for Mr. Tillerson, or do you think there should be separate hearings specifically on Russian involvement in the election?
I think all of the above. I think, unfortunately, listen, John McCain is an American hero, but I am not hearing very much. I'm hearing nothing, actually, from Senator Mitch McConnell, who's the Senate Majority Leader, who is accused in the post-reporting of refusing to go public on a bipartisan basis with evidence that the CIA had that he was intervening directly on behalf of Donald Trump. I'm not hearing from Tom Cotton. I'm not hearing from Marco Rubio. Where are these anti-Russia hawks? So I think we have to take every opportunity, whether it's an independent commission, and yes, at the confirmation hearings. And I think in that same interview, John McCain indicated that if Tillerson didn't satisfy his concerns about his ties with Russia, that he would not vote for him. And I think every Republican, every Democrat should take that position. For one thing, the man is not qualified to be Secretary of State. I can't think, except for his relationship with Putin, why in the world Donald Trump would have chosen him.
Yeah, well, actually, let's talk about why Donald Trump says he chose him. And this is Sound Cut 3. I want to play that and then get Matt Welch's take on that. This is Donald Trump explaining why he did, in fact, choose Mr. Tillerson. We're going to pull that up in just a second. But, Matt, the question is going to be whether or not the senators that are looking to confirm or not confirm Mr. Tillerson are going to delve deeply into his Russian ties, deeply into his business interests. Okay, now we do have that soundbite. Here's Donald Trump talking about Tillerson.
He's much more than a business executive. I mean, he's a world-class player. He's in charge of, I guess, the largest company in the world. He's in charge of an oil company that's pretty much double the size of his next nearest competitor. It's been a company that's been unbelievably managed. And to me, a great advantage is he knows many of the players, and he knows them well. He does massive deals in Russia. He does massive deals for the company, not for himself, for the company.
So he says he's done massive deals for himself. He's done massive deals for, he says, the company. I think he meant country. But let's listen to Tillerson himself back in February during a speaker series when he didn't know he was going to get this job, talking about some of the massive deals that he's done for the country. Do we have that soundbite? We may not have that soundbite. Oh, do we have it? Yes. Okay, let's play it.
But I'm not here to represent the United States government's interest. I'm not here to defend it, nor am I here to criticize it. That's not what I do. I'm a businessman. And you would be surprised how many times I've had to have that conversation with heads of state who want to say to me, well, look, I know you can have some influence on the president. I need you to go back and tell him this. Okay? And there's only been 2 occasions where I did that because it was a matter of national security. And they did not know how to get a message to the White House. So I did it.
All right, slight change of plan because, yeah, Shari, you actually alerted us to that clip. Do you know which presidents he was talking about?
No, and it's unclear what the national security issues were. Certainly this is going to come out and should come out in a confirmation hearing, because I'd like to know what it's about. And he's under no obligation to keep it private. He's a private citizen. He's a CEO of a company, and there's nothing stopping him from sharing it.
And that's the question, Matt, is whether or not the Republicans in Congress are going to have the stomach to delve into some of these issues, or whether or not, because they now have a president of their same party, Tillerson sails through.
This morning, John McCain and Lindsey Graham issued a joint statement along with Chuck Schumer, talking about the troubling status of these Russian ties and how Congress needs to, on a bipartisan level, investigate this. It transcends partisan politics. I read this as a shot across the bow at the Tillerson nomination, in addition to the CIA reports and the leakings about them and all the discussion about them. There's only a 52 to 48 majority of Republicans in the Senate right now, and more than 10 of those senators didn't endorse, or at least retracted their endorsement of Donald Trump. A lot of them are Russia hawks. Jennifer Rubin's absolutely right to point to where the hell is Marco Rubio and some of the traditional Russia hawks out there. So I think that you're going to see very specific pushback against Tillerson, because, look, there hasn't been a complete novice in the Secretary of State position since at least the 19th century, and that's only because I couldn't Wikipedia back before 1880 right. On this stuff. But no, we have people who have government experience of some relevance. Doesn't mean that they're good, but his only experience here as a transactional figure making oil deals. And keep in mind that Donald Trump several times in the campaign said about Iraq that one of our problems there, in addition to going in there and all that kind of stuff is that we didn't seize the oil. So in addition to the Russian things, one of the questions we got to ask Tillerson once he's on the dock there is that good policy? Are we going to go and seize the oil fields of ISIS next? And is that something that we should do? That would be a kind of corporate cronyism the likes that we haven't seen in a long time.
Go on.
The other thing to add to that is that Andrew Mitchell also said that John Bolton, who was the UN ambassador, is said to be the Deputy Secretary of State. This is not a man who plays well in the sandbox with others.
Yeah.
And I cannot see him playing number two to a novice, a foreign policy novice. It's going to be. It's going to be very hot in the seventh floor of the State Department. I can't imagine it's going to go well.
Well, that's assuming that they both get confirmed. And Malcolm Nance, what are some of the other challenges or some of the other questions that people on these confirmation hearings should be asking? Because Tillerson, to Matt's point, is a complete novice in terms of foreign policy. He's only a deal maker, and the deals he's been making include an oil deal with Russia that was scuttled by sanctions that were placed on Russia because of their intervention in Ukraine. I can see him cutting one deal, which is lifting those sanctions, which immediately helps Exxon's bottom line.
You know, what's absolutely amazing about the Trump campaign is their motto was America first. And I'm not seeing that in their transition team. What I'm seeing is that other people's interest, Exxon's interest, the interest of the Russians are coming well above the United States. You know, based on the Post reporting and the CIA report and the other information that I'm sure we're going to be getting in droves here about the Russian hacking, it appears that partisanship has trumped nation, has trumped country. And that's one of the questions, excuse me, that will have to be answered at these hearings. Tillerson, will he actually be the CEO of Exxon when he's up there? Or is he planning on being the business manager of the United States? Or will he understand what Secretary of State is? Because in his little video there, he described the role of Secretary of State, the person who goes and acts in a diplomatic capacity to transmit messages for the President of the United States. He's going to have to figure out what his role is, and the Senate is going to have to hold his feet to the fire.
Okay, apparently Marco Rubio has made some sort of commentary about Vladimir Putin, and the Secretary of State, there it is. Being a friend of Vladimir Putin is not an attribute that I'm hoping from a Secretary of State. Well, that's nice. Marco Rubio had something to say there. Michael McFaul, we only talked about Mr. Tillerson so far, but does the accumulation of so many pro-Putin voices around Donald Trump trouble you?
Well, it's a mixed bag. I mean, obviously, Mr. Tillerson knows Vladimir Putin probably better than almost any American that is not in the government. I think you have to. I think it's Henry Kissinger and Steven Seagal and him, as far as when we used to count these things. So he does know Mr. Putin well, and that translated into a $300 billion potential joint venture back in 2011. When I was ambassador, I knew that the ExxonMobil operation in Moscow well. It was a big business deal at a time before the Russians invaded Ukraine that the Obama administration supported. But the real problem, in my view, is that he's one-dimensional. He spent his entire career at ExxonMobil, and there are lots of issues in the portfolio of the Secretary of State that don't have to do with energy. What about North Korea? What about ICBMs? What about the NATO alliance? And I could go on with a long list. And I believe he should get his hearing, and the confirmation should go forward in terms of a hearing. But prima facie, the resume does not look like somebody ready to be Secretary of State.
Yeah. And I will just end the segment by reading a tweet by a gentleman named Evan McDowell, who says he's an EU affairs consultant, who tweets that Alexander Dugin, Putin's eminence grise, has said, Washington is ours, Chisinau is ours, Sofia is ours. Now we just have to drain the swamp at home. That is the view, apparently, from Moscow. Matt, Yashar, Jennifer, and Malcolm will be back. Thank you to Ambassador Michael McFaul.